All right, let me set the scene. I was asked, early days of business, I was asked to come and train farmers. Now, I grew up in a chook farm, but didn't seem to relate across to sheep farming. We were the poorer cousins. But what did I know? They wanted to talk about change management and so on. So here they were, sitting in this room, in a hotel, out in the middle of nowhere near the Grampians, and here I was, the suit from the city, coming to teach them. So this is it. The training was to be conducted in the local pub of this tiny town, stuck in the middle of some of the most beautiful country I'd ever seen. It was overshadowed by the Grampians mountain range in Victoria, and the paddocks were beautiful and green after some very good rainfalls. Now, I want you to put yourself in this situation. The publican was a friendly giant who was also captain of the local football team, which had just won the grand final. Pictures of teams from early in the century to the champions of the day hung proudly on the walls. Dressed in suits and looking like Mormons who had accidentally ridden their push bikes off the beaten track, my colleague and I introduced ourselves as the facilitators of the training program. "They're running a bit late," said the publican. The first speaker, who is a tax specialist, forgot to bring his overhead projector and struggled for 2 hours with his riveting GST speech. The only consolation was that a speech on GST that had gone wrong can only make us look good. Now, they couldn't tell us in advance how many people would be attending. It depended on the weather. If it rained, they would be there. But if it was sunny, they'd be doing the hay. Guess what? It was sunny. So we had no idea what to expect when the doors opened. Finally, the tax expert finished and we got a glimpse of the waking crowd. We counted 12, and they had us or we had them for the next 6 hours. We were greeted by the initial caller, an organiser of the event. He was a nice professional guy who obviously wanted to inject some of that professionalism into the local business people. He began to introduce us to the group. Now, I want you to slot in with these people. First, there was Harry, a local wool grower, not in the mood for any crap from city suits. And with him was his charming wife, Ethel, farmer and local hairdresser. By the look of her own hair, she'd obviously gained her credentials and experience from the shearing shed, and the mind boggled at the thought of Ethel creating a hairdo for that special occasion. Then there was Tom. Tom sat right in the middle at the front, and he was ready to let us know if he thought we were bullshitting. The only saving grace was that he could only stay awake for intervals of 5 minutes and would then have a nod off for a half an hour. The amazing thing was that he remembered everything we said. My nan used to do the same thing in front of the television. She would fall asleep for most of the show, then wake up laughing at the right moments and swear that she was just resting her eyes. A young couple sat at the back with their farmhand and would not make any eye contact in case I asked them to speak. There were several other people, some completely cynical, some had no idea what we were on about, and a couple who were actually interested in picking up some new ideas. It didn't take long before I realised that the usual jokes and funny stories were just not going to work. I hunted through my mind for every group activity that I'd ever used to get people involved, but none of them drew a response. Even the exciting stories about my life on the chook farm didn't work. This was going to be another long day. So I decided the best thing to do was to get to the point, so I launched into my session on change and the ways to manage change. Part of dealing with change was to find ways to overcome procrastination. I should have learnt years ago that you never assume people know what you are talking about, especially when you use big words. I asked if people could give me an example of ways that they procrastinate. Heads dropped, and everyone looked at the ground until Harry broke the silence. "Yeah, I do that all the time," he said. "When I don't feel like doing something I get in the white ute and drive around the paddocks making out I'm checking the fences." "Oh yeah," muttered others in the group. "I do that too." If nothing else, they discovered a new word. I was suddenly comforted with the realisation that it doesn't matter where you are or who you're with, the lessons of life remain the same. "My wife has procrastinated for years," said Harry, now on a roll. "We haven't had sex since the wedding." And with that, the group burst into laughter. Poor Ethel turned a deep shade of crimson as she dug her elbows into Harry. "That's because you spend all your time with the sheep," she said, which brought another round of laughter from the group. The little white ute and the lack of Harry's sex life remain the talking point for the rest of the day. One of the things that people always relate to in conflict, and in most instances are looking to resolve it. The trouble down on the farm is if you're not fighting patriarchal rule, then you're fighting matriarchal rule. Both as bad as each other, but just manifest themselves in different ways. Conflict's not a problem, said one of the farmers. If they don't do what they're told, just tell them, bugger off. Now, with a background in industrial relations, this was not a strategy I could condone. However, deep down I knew that every one of us had at some time wished that we could resolve our issues that way. At that moment, Tom woke up, as if he had never been asleep, and entered the conversation. The problem is that we let them worry us, he said. And listen to this, because this changed my life in the area of people management. My daughter once said to me, when I was having trouble with someone, don't let them worry you. They're just 5 minutes in your whole lifetime. Such insight. And then promptly closed his eyes again and went to sleep. I was beginning to wonder who was teaching who at this stage, and began to think about how seriously we take ourselves sometimes, when often the answer is simple. At 4 o'clock on the dot, Tom woke up again, and as he did, a truckload of sheep heading to market went past the window. As if royalty was passing by, the whole room stood up and stared out the window. That must be Macca's sheep, said Harry. Nice looking sheep. Now, when you have a room full of macho men looking out the window telling you how pretty the sheep are, then you get some understanding as to how Ethel must have been feeling. With everyone back in their seats, Tom piped up. Have you finished yet? I got 3 hours of hay carting to do before bed. This seemed like a good time to head towards a conclusion, and just hope that some of the incredibly brilliant adult learning principles had taken root, and that major change management and human resource training and development strategies were about to be implemented in the district. I hope not, because that's not what they needed. I don't know what they got out of the day, but it was the best personal development program I'd ever attended. You see, change is important, but we need to recognise that most of the change that needs to take place in the life of a person or organisation is unique. And to force my ideas and strategies onto this group of people was totally inappropriate. They had individual needs. So if you're making major changes in your life, then seek advice. Listen to what people have to say, evaluate the information against your own beliefs and needs, and then make the decision that is right for you and for them.